I find the writings of one of the most famous Kazakh modern literature authors, Smagul Yelubay, especially close to me. A devoted master of words, a playwright who made a significant contribution to the development of classic Kazakh literature. A person who was in fact recognized as a classic in his lifetime. And it is wonderful that he is our contemporary, and we have the opportunity to enjoy the fruits of his creativity. His novel, The Lonely Yurt, was dedicated to an acute historical subject, which was not generally accepted for many years. This writing has entered the font of the best Kazakh literary works forever. Mahbal Musa is a poet, member of the Union of Writers and Journalists of Kazakhstan. She is the winner of Jensagurov and Makhataev Republican contests. Apart from this, she won the first prize of the Republican Altyn Tobulghi contest, organized by the foundation of Kazakhstan's first president. Also, Mahbal is a winner of 100 New Faces of Kazakhstan project. Works like this always become a kind of document of the people in which its history is recorded. For example, Mukhtar Awezov's epic novel The Path of Abay has become a classic in both Kazakh and global literature, and it has introduced the whole world to the history of Kazakhs. And thanks to Smagul Yelubay's The Lonely Yurt, we, the generation of a new era, for the first time have learned about the historical period of time that has become tragic for our people. Well-known Moscow writer and playwright Oleg Osetinsky once said about this book, Smagul Yelubay's novel is the same masterpiece of Kazakh literature as And Quiet Flows the Dawn, and this comparison with Sholokhov worth a lot. Smagul Yelubay was born on the 9th of March 1947 in Turkmenistan. In 1961, he moved to Kazakhstan. In 1971, he enrolled at the journalism faculty, Al-Farabi Kazakh State University. In 1975, he graduated from 2-year higher screenwriting courses in Moscow. In the period between 1976 and 1992, he worked at the screenwriting department at the Kazakh Film Studio. He also worked as the editor-in-chief at the Parasat magazine and Radio Free Europe Radio Liberty in Prague. He penned a number of collections such as Oysul Qara, Patron, Satar Soqbaghi, Satar Spath, Biltse Shamnon Jarghi, Light of a Lonely Candle, as well as novels called Lonely Yurt, Transitory World, and In the World. The writer was awarded the Kurmet Order and was the vice president of the Pen Club that united like-minded people from all over the world. The writer made a huge and invaluable contribution to the development of the domestic film dramaturgy. His first work for the cinema was the script he wrote for Kanybek Kasimov's movie, The Red Yurt, dedicated to collectivization and confiscation of property. This work was immediately subjected to a strict censorship. It was thanks to Smagul Yelubay that many works of Kazakh writers spoke in the language of cinematography. Basically, they all raised topics that were relevant to the nation at that time. The film Surjikey, The Angel of Death, directed by Damir Manabayev, won the main prize of the CIS Film Festival in 1992. Such films as House Under the Moon by Bolat Omarov, Atone, and Kek were also highly evaluated. Once the director Aslanbek Tauikel came to the writer with a proposal to make a film based on Sayken Seyfulin's work called In the Carriages of Death. But in response, Smagul Yelubay offered his own script based on the poem Batır Bayan, written by Makhjan Zhumabayev. This was his long-standing idea. So within 22 days, they launched the production of the Batır Bayan film. A great contribution to the development of modern cinema was the work on the films The Diamond Sword, The Golden Throne, and the Kazakh Khanate series. Smagul Elubay began his literary career with a story called Birthday. Over time, the writer was absorbed by realism even more. His skills were improving, his views were changing, and he started to turn to the issues that were relevant to the society and the people. His work could be called heroic, since he raised topics that were always strictly forbidden. Readers highly appreciated this creative feat because his writings were always revealing things that were previously hidden. One of such grateful readers was academician Zinullah Kabdolov. Two things are needed for talent: labor and courage. And Smagul Yelubay has both. Apart from his other writings, in 3 years Smagul has spent 3 novels. These were the results of long days and nights he spent working tirelessly. These are the fruits of his inspiration. Today I want to share with you my impressions of Smagul Yelubay's story called The Bag with Asyks. It was written in 1980, when I was only 3 years old. It was a time when life in the city and in the countryside were extremely different. The story perfectly describes that time, the life of those years. The relationship between grandfather and grandson, their love for each other, all this is quite touching. Farewell. The story begins with the old man Shonai getting on the train, which was heading from Karakalpakstan to Almaty. His heart is full of various feelings, and above all, he misses his grandson and has a great desire to see him. The main character of the story, the old man Shonai, looks like a respectable, respected, and noble person. As the saying goes, if there are old people, then you own treasures. Because it is the old men who wish prosperity for their people, their descendants wish everyone luck in life. The old man Shonai and his wife Raush were very happy about the birth of their grandson, and since then, their thoughts were entirely dedicated to the baby. They were thinking about how they would raise him, educate him, and pamper the boy. When the old man's wife died, the children moved to the city and took the grandson away, leaving Shonai alone in the village, where he could hardly bear being alone. When the son and his family moved, the old man did not want to abandon the house and his usual way of living, and so, driven by the desire to see his grandson, he set off on his journey. I just want to see him once, the old man thought. With him, he had a bag with Asyks, which he collected for his grandson, Yedege. He vividly imagined how happy the grandson would be when he received such an unusual gift. Now let us read this part of the story. And his 7-year-old grandson, Yedege, seems to be waving his hand while standing at the window, craning his neck, impatiently looking out for him. Ah, Papi, the old man thinks affectionately, recalling these heartwarming habits of his grandson. Once he was about to go home when his grandson reached into his inner pocket and slipped something in it, saying, "Ata." "What are you doing?" the grandfather asked. "I put it back in your pocket. Bring me Asyks from the village." Cheeks puffed up, lips pouted. "Oh, you're on my puppy." The old man spent 6 months collecting Asyks from his relatives and friends in different places: Konrad, Kozyele, Shomanai, Nukus. He would be generously treated with beshbarmak, and upon finishing his meal, he would always take the Asyk bone with him. By the end of summer, the bag was full. Are there any boys playing Asyks now? Perhaps in the villages, boys are familiar with this game, but in the cities, they forgot about it long ago. These days, boys are glued to smartphones and TV sets and have no idea that such game exists and how much it can be benefit to the body and spirit. And we, the grown-ups, are to blame too, as we do not teach our kids well. In his work, the writer Smagul Yelubay tells us about how much we lose, recklessly striving for a civilized society. So what awaits the old man who has come a long way to meet his grandson? The son's family moved to a new flat. The old man found it, following the address that was sent to him in letter. His own son, Tohtasin, met him alone, wearing a guilty look on his face. The house was silent. The old man's heart sensed that something was wrong. His heart ached. He rushed through the empty rooms, looking for his grandson. Here the writer managed to accurately convey the psychological state of the characters, describing their inner turmoil. The old man learns the sad news. It turns out that the son divorced his wife. The news severely and painfully hurts the old man's heart. It literally tears his soul. A divorce. Back then, such word was rare for the Kazakhs, and it was considered a very serious and difficult step. It could happen only because of some very solid reasons. Among the people, this was considered a rare and shameful phenomenon. Here the writer again manages to convey the whole drama of the moment, showing how society has changed and how things that were considered impossible and censored for centuries has suddenly become commonplace. Having changed his usual way of living, having moved to a city, a person seems to be changing his attitude towards national traditions, drifting away from his past, losing some important qualities. How can this happen? Two young people marry for love and start a family, later scatter in different directions. Then the events unfold in the story as follows. Old Shonai rushes in search of his own grandson. He spends all his savings to pay for taxi, looking for his grandson in Almaty schools. Autumn passes, winter's coming. But the old man, while he's still alive, does not lose hope of finding his grandson. He even memorized street names. One day he goes to school located in the outskirts of the city. He learned that his grandson is studying there. Moreover, his mother changed his Kazakh class to Russian. The circumstance has upset the old man very much. In those years, there were only a few schools with a Kazakh language of instruction. Many Kazakhs preferred to study and teach their children in Russian, as it seemed to them that otherwise it would simply be impossible for them to become successful. The old man's daughter-in-law seemed to think the same. So what kind of future awaits his beloved grandson Yedege? That's what our main character was thinking about. Any grandfather is always concerned about the future of his offspring. The writer has masterfully described the old man's reflections. He was thinking about how the life of his grandson will turn out if he forgets his roots and drifts away from traditions and his mother tongue. It's only right when people say, "You will reap what you sow." The teacher said to old Shonai that the boy walks to school, meaning he lives nearby. So he circles around the school, inspired by the hope of seeing his grandson. It's impossible to read that part of the story impartially, the part that describes how the old man runs in the streets looking for his grandson, looking for a familiar silhouette in the crowd, tearfully asking people about Yedege. And here the behavior of Yedege's father, Tohtasan, is completely incomprehensible. The man who shows nothing but indifference and helplessness. His wife even managed to change the surname of his son to her own. How can this even be possible? It's only the old man's character who is noble and dignified, and it's a shame how he couldn't just give up his son Tohtasan and his ex-wife, people who were not able to preserve their family and who behaved the way they did. The last part of the story, it's so sad. The old man is waiting for a bus at a bus stop in the very area where his grandson lives. Cars, buses, and pedestrians pass by, and suddenly a cry from one of the buses is heard. "Ata!" The voice is so familiar, dear, heartbreaking. At first, the old man did not even realize where the voice was coming from. Initially, he thought it was coming from the bus, and then he saw his grandson leaning out of the bus with his both hands placed on the window. The old man quickly rushed forward, but the bus started off, and trying to catch up with it, the old man fell on slippery ground and fainted. His crutch flew off in one direction, the bag with the six fell out, and they scattered along the road. What happens next is unknown. At the end of the story, you can only feel regret and repeat. What a pity. Why did it finish like that? The meaning of a literary work, its theme, the unfolding of its characters, psychological peripeteia, all of this is inextricable and intertwined. The writer wasn't just describing a case in life or the story of old Shonai, who was looking for his grandson. He was telling about how, and not necessarily for the better, the society is changing, how the best centuries-old traditions are being violated. How did it happen that a thread linking generations was cut? The thread between grandfather and a grandson, father and son, spouses. 3 generations, 1 era, fast-moving time. A change of priorities that sometimes leads to a dead end. And there is no doubt that everyone who will read this work will find something useful for them and learn certain life lessons.